Calaroga Shark Media.
Hello and welcome to Palace Intrigue. I am your host, Mark Francis. Omid Scobie spoke with Vanity Fair about Endgame prior to the names being revealed in the Dutch version and said, "I hope that people understand that despite press coverage, this is not a book about Harry and Meghan. This is not Finding Freedom Part 2. It's a really important look at the current state of the British royal family, written in a way, and I don't think anyone has ever done before, at a time when I think it's more important than ever. And I hope that rather than trying to ignore or reject this kind of dialogue, that it's embraced, because I think that ultimately it always leads to better things. We've reached this pinnacle moment with the royal family where the firm as we know it is essentially at risk. I say as we know it because I'm certainly not one to go out declaring the end of the monarchy. I think that's very unlikely. Regardless of any Republican movement or apathy among younger people, those days are far away. But we've only recently reached the end of a 70-year reign, which we celebrated and felt upheld the values and the morals of what the Crown promotes and champions. I thought it was a really important time to look at whether that's still the case, because the recent events, actions, decisions, and goings-on within the House of Windsor in the last 5 or 6 years give us a completely different story. As it is a publicly funded institution, I think it's important that we're able to actually stand back and take a look at the big picture. It's for those of us who feel more comfortable questioning the purpose and the relevance of the monarchy, but also for those within it who have the ability to either take it forward in a really positive direction where growth and modernization and all those things are possible, or whether they'll be completely ignored and we see perhaps what's happened across other parts of Europe where monarchies have shrunk in importance and relevance. I wanted a chance, especially given how much has happened in recent years, to actually pump the brakes and go back in and reanalyze these stories and piece together some of the things that we hadn't known or hadn't thought about. And to fill in the gaps, we hear things here and there, but we don't always get the big picture, and it takes a long time to reach that point. Even with the exit of Harry and Meghan, we've heard a lot from them, but the really in the weeds stuff that I get into in the book with the goings-on with the various communication aides and private secretaries around William and the impact that those actions had on his relationship with his brother, I think those are things that no one's really ever gone into great detail about before. When it comes to the conversations about Archie, for example, I was genuinely interested and confused as to why we didn't hear Harry and Meghan talk about it. Again, this huge allegation made on the Oprah interview and then suddenly doesn't come up in the Netflix special, even though there was a whole section on race. It doesn't come up in Spare. We discovered that there were conversations over letters between Charles and Meghan after the Oprah interview, and I was really interested to know what they touched on and how it was left. I thought it was one of the only moments in recent years that showed some maturity between concerned parties, because they had exchanges rather than burying heads under the sand or sweeping things under the rug. Here were two adults who did not see eye to eye on the issue. That was quite clear in how it was conveyed to me by the sources that I spoke to. Although they were able to both share how they felt, I think for Charles, there was a worry over how these conversations had been perceived. And it is conversations, as we've now learned that there were two family members involved. Charles is the head of the household, or the boss, so it was good to see him engaging in that conversation with Meghan, even if it was left with two people feeling very differently about the situation. Still, this is more than just private business of Meghan and Charles. This is also a matter of an institution that should be more eloquent, more educated, and more mature when it comes to dealing with these matters. That's why I felt it was important to go back into some of these items that we've already discussed so much. I felt that elements of them weren't completely known, or there were details that I knew and other reporters on the royal beat knew, but no one wants to say it, so let me be the one to do so. In Endgame, Scobie discusses Prince William's complex nature within the royal family. Scobie suggests that while William has commendably adapted to his royal duties, he also possesses a challenging temperament. The author describes William as a disciplined king-in-waiting, a perception shaped by his public persona. Scobie notes, many people I've spoken to who know him believe William comes by this honestly. He quotes a source from Kensington Palace saying, as an adult in his 40s, the former Duke of Cambridge has fully embraced the path that he's on. Just like the Queen, he has learned the importance of duty coming before anything else. However, Scobie reveals another side of William behind closed doors. He suggests that William, like his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, embodies the institution publicly, but privately his temperament resembles that of his father, characterized by occasional outbursts. A former aide to William is quoted, William is a man that likes to get things done quickly, done efficiently. In the process of making that happen, he can definitely be sharp. Echoing this sentiment, another former palace staffer comments, he's capable of having constructive conversations to receive criticism, but there's a spikiness when dealing with him too. And a third adds, you don't want to be the bearer of bad news around him. He's quick to get fed up and blame. Palace Intrigue will be right back. Sarah Vine's opinion piece in the Daily Mail comes under the headline, Royal biographer Omid Scobie may be a leech, but the treachery of Harry was so much worse. Vine writes, in his venomous new royal biography, Omid Scobie, widely regarded as the unofficial mouthpiece for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, claims the Princess of Wales spent more time talking about her sister-in-law Meghan than she ever actually spent talking to her. I wonder where he got that idea from. And in any case, arguably the same could be said about Meghan. She passed just a few years in the royal fold, even less time as a working royal, before turning on those exquisite ankles of hers, declaring the whole lot a bunch of racist, outdated bullies, and, along with her husband Harry, flogging her tales of woe to the highest bidder. In other words, she stayed just long enough to bag the frocks, jewels, titles, and the cachet, but not long enough to really get to know any of the family. In no particular order, Meghan told King Charles there are two royal racists who spoke about her son Archie's skin colour. Meghan decided against attending the coronation as she didn't want to dive back into the soap opera of the court. How magnanimous of her. The Duke and Duchess sent Christmas presents to the Wales children but didn't receive a text by way of thank you, and Charles told other members of the royal family not to trust Harry following the publication of his memoir Spare. Beef, beef, and a side order of beef with loads of lolly for afters. And that's the point, isn't it? The lolly, because however much people such as Scobie and maybe the Sussexes themselves might want to frame this book and others like it as noble exercises in truth-telling, the truth is that they are just milking our most famous institution for axe-grinding money. Of course, in some cases, the royals bring it on themselves by spilling the beans. Princess Diana collaborated with Morton on Diana, A True Story, and gave that interview to Martin Bashir, although it turned out to have been obtained by false pretenses. But in many ways, Diana can be forgiven. She was so young and naive when she married Prince Charles and had very little support or preparation for the role. Her indiscretions were cries for help, not attempts to wound. Prince Harry is different. He has sadly turned out to be the ultimate self-destructive royal. That Oprah interview, the Netflix documentary, his autobiography, which was one big basket of dirty royal laundry sold to the highest bidder. It might be different if Harry was at least honest about this, but no, he wants it both ways, to be a royal, but also rake in the royalties. Whereas the likes of Omid Scobie are annoying leeches. Harry is much worse. The people he is using to line his pockets are his own flesh and blood. That is why his betrayal was a dagger in the heart of the late Queen. It is also why he continues to be a great source of agony for his father, the King, and it is why his brother, the Prince of Wales, is rightly furious with him. Harry has inflicted upon them all the very tortures he accuses others inflicting on him, yet still he has the gall to cast himself as victim. Lady Colin Campbell tells GB News King Charles could have called Harry worse things than a fool. When asked by host Mark Dolan if the account was credible, Lady C said, "Oh, that's one I think is credible. I think it's one of the few credible things in all the excerpts that is credible." And in fact, the king could have said an awful lot more than, I think calling Harry a fool was very anecdote, but my understanding is that he called him a lot worse. And let's face facts, he could have actually called him things like traitor, disloyal, Iscariot. So calling him a fool is very, very mild. And there you have it. If you'd like to email us, our address is thepalaceintrigue@gmail.com. Please follow us on Spotify or Apple or your app of choice. And if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button for us. It really helps. I'm Mark Francis. My thanks to John McDermott. This is Palace Intrigue. Good times.